The sun of Viridian rose slowly over the crystal towers of the capital city, casting 1,000 sparkling reflections across the streets below. The people of the city were already awake, moving through the morning routines with the grace and discipline that had been taught for generations. Viridian was a world known across galaxies for its beauty and intelligence, where technology and nature existed in perfect harmony. And at the heart of this world was Princess Leora, the only daughter of King Valon, heir to the throne, trained since birth to lead with wisdom, patience, and composure. Today, however, was different. It was not another ordinary day of ceremonies and lessons. Today, the princess was to meet representatives from another world, a world that was young, rough around the edges, and full of creatures called humans. Among them was Captain Ethan Kane, a soldier known for courage, resourcefulness, and an unusual calm in situations that would terrify most. Leora had read his records and seen his accomplishments in the galaxy's archives. Humans were unpredictable, but Ethan was one of the few whose presence inspired confidence rather than suspicion. Still, the idea of meeting him made her heart beat faster, though she would never admit it. Her morning began with preparation, a meticulous routine that included ceremonial clothing, delicate jewelry, and the careful styling of her silver-blue hair. Every detail mattered, for even a small imperfection could be used against her by rivals or critics. Leora looked at herself in the mirror, her reflection perfectly calm, but inside, a storm of curiosity and tension swirled. She reminded herself to breathe, to stay composed. Today, she could not afford to let emotion take over. As she descended the grand staircase of the royal palace, her attendants moved silently around her, ensuring that every step, every gesture, was flawless. The halls were filled with intricate murals of past leaders, scholars, and warriors, all frozen in time, reminding Leora of her duty and the legacy she carried. She could feel the weight of her people's expectations pressing down on her shoulders. But she also felt something else, a flicker of excitement. Meeting a human, and specifically Captain Ethan Kane, was not just a political formality. It was an event that could change everything she thought she knew about other species. Outside the palace, the delegation from Earth had arrived. The humans' landing ship was unlike any other craft Leora had seen. Its design was functional, practical, lacking the elegance of Viridian engineering, but there was a raw strength in it. The doors opened and a line of humans stepped out, their uniforms neat but simple. Most of them looked nervous, glancing at the palace with awe and perhaps fear. And then Captain Ethan Kane appeared. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and moved with a quiet confidence that immediately drew attention. His dark hair was neatly kept, and his eyes, a deep shade of brown, scanned the surroundings with both curiosity and alertness. Unlike the others, he did not bow excessively, nor did he show signs of anxiety. There was a calm assurance in the way he carried himself, a balance between respect and confidence. Leora noticed him instantly. She had been trained to observe every detail, the posture, the expression, the slightest twitch of emotion. And Ethan Kane presented a puzzle. He was respectful, yet different, human, yet disciplined. She felt a spark of something unfamiliar. Curiosity. "Princess Leora," one of her attendants whispered. "The human delegation has arrived. Shall we greet them now?" Leora nodded, taking a deep breath. She knew that this moment was more than a greeting. It was a test of composure, diplomacy, and intelligence. She could not show too much emotion, yet she could not appear cold either. Every step, every smile, every word mattered. The grand doors of the palace opened, and Leora stepped forward to meet the delegation. The humans bowed, some awkwardly, some formally. When Ethan stepped forward, he offered a gesture that was polite, yet not ceremonial, a simple nod and a firm gaze. Leora's trained mind quickly analyzed him, confident, honest, unafraid, and aware of protocol without being constrained by it. "Welcome to Viridian," Leora said, her voice steady and melodic. "I am Princess Leora. It is an honor to host your delegation." Ethan's gaze met hers directly. "Princess Leora, the honor is ours. We are grateful for your hospitality and hope to learn from your people. His voice was calm even, carrying a subtle warmth that was different from the rigid tones of other humans she had read about. As the formal greetings continued, Leora felt a strange awareness of his presence. Every word he spoke was measured, every movement deliberate. Yet there was a lightness to him, a quiet energy that made him different from anyone she had met. She found herself listening more intently than usual, noting how he interacted with others, how he responded to subtle cues, and how he carried himself without arrogance. The delegation was escorted through the palace halls, where ambassadors from Viridian observed with careful attention. Leora walked alongside Ethan, keeping her posture perfect, her expressions neutral. But inside she was alert, analyzing every detail. She noticed the way he paused slightly when passing a mural, depicting Viridian's first leaders, a small sign of respect. She noticed how he subtly adjusted his posture when approaching her attendants, showing consideration without being overbearing. Your palace is remarkable, Ethan said quietly, as if speaking to himself. The craftsmanship, the balance, with nature, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. Leora allowed a faint smile. We take pride in our heritage and our harmony with the world. It is the foundation of our culture and our strength. He nodded as if acknowledging something deeper. It shows. The people here must be very disciplined, very devoted. Yes, she replied, keeping her voice neutral but her mind racing. She could not reveal how much she was noticing him. Every gesture, every word from Ethan was a challenge to her composure. Humans were known for impulsiveness, yet this one seemed almost balanced yet entirely human. The tour continued through the palace gardens where towering crystal trees reflected light in every color imaginable. Streams of water ran in precise channels, yet seemed natural and effortless. Leora walked beside Ethan, her hands folded in front of her, her eyes alert. She could feel the tension of curiosity, a spark that made her pulse quicken. She reminded herself, remain composed. This was diplomacy, not personal interest. Ethan, however, seemed unbothered by the spectacle around him. He moved naturally, observing the surroundings without formal awe or excessive admiration. He occasionally asked questions, not to challenge but to understand. These structures, are they powered by crystals alone? He asked. Leora nodded, pleased with his curiosity. Yes. The crystals are both a source of energy and a symbol of balance. They respond to our thought patterns, our intentions, and the natural flow of the world. He looked thoughtful. Fascinating. Your people must have great control of both mind and environment. A small flicker of pride crossed Leora's face, quickly replaced by composure. Control is essential. Without it, harmony cannot exist. As they walked, Leora found herself unexpectedly enjoying his company. His manner was straightforward yet respectful, his curiosity genuine yet restrained. She could feel a connection forming, a professional connection, yes, but also something more subtle. Her heart beat slightly faster, though she reminded herself that this was merely observation, nothing more. By the time they returned to the palace hall, Leora had already formed several impressions of Ethan Kane. He was disciplined, clever, observant, and courageous. Yet there was something undefinable about him, a raw humanity that contrasted with the elegance of her people. It was both intriguing and challenging to her. She realized that humans, despite their imperfections, possessed qualities that could complement Viridian strength. The formal welcome ceremony was about to begin. Advisors and ambassadors took their places, watching closely. Leora straightened her posture, her mind focused. She was aware that every gesture would be observed, every expression analyzed. And yet, as she glanced briefly at Ethan, she noticed him meeting her gaze without hesitation, unafraid and respectful. A small, unspoken understanding passed between them. The ceremony began with traditional greetings, bows, and chants. Leora performed every movement with precision, her expression calm and regal, yet inside her mind remained alert, thinking about the human beside her. She wondered how much he understood, how much he noticed, and whether he could see past the formality to the person she was beneath the royal exterior. As the ceremony continued, a sense of anticipation hung in the air. Leora knew that this meeting was more than a simple greeting. It was the beginning of something important, a relationship between worlds, between cultures, and perhaps between two individuals who were more alike than they realized. When the Tar ceremony ended, and the humans were escorted to their quarters, Leora remained in the hall for a moment, taking a deep breath. She allowed herself a private thought. Captain Ethan Kane was unlike anyone she had met before. He challenged her expectations, intrigued her mind, and, without her permission, made her heart beat faster. She reminded herself, composure is key. Observation is essential. Curiosity is permissible, but only within limits. The day after the arrival of the human delegation, Princess Leora awoke early, as was her custom. The soft light of Viridian's twin suns filtered through the tall crystal windows of her chambers, casting rainbow patterns across the polished floors. Today, a more formal part of the interplanetary meeting was scheduled, a ceremonial display of skill, diplomacy, and composure designed to show both sides the strength and intelligence of their representatives. Leora knew this would be no ordinary day. The human delegation, and especially Captain Ethan Kane, would be observing every detail, every gesture. In turn, she would need to perform perfectly, keeping her discipline and her poise intact. Yet beneath her calm exterior, a quiet tension hummed. Her curiosity about Ethan, the human soldier who had made such a strong impression on her the day before, had not faded. In fact, it had grown. Her attendants moved around her, helping her into a ceremonial gown woven from fine threads of light-reflecting silk. The dress shimmered in shades of blue and silver, designed to show grace without excess. Every movement was precise. Every fold and layer mattered. Leora allowed herself a moment to admire the artistry, then reminded herself that she had a role to play, a role that demanded both elegance and discipline. By the time she descended the grand staircase to the ceremonial hall, her nerves had steadied, replaced by sharp focus. The hall was already filled with observers, alien dignitaries, ambassadors, and Viridian advisors, all carefully arranged according to strict protocol. The humans were seated near the center, their posture respectful but attentive. Ethan Kane stood slightly apart from the others, his calm presence immediately noticeable in the bustling room. The ceremony began with formal greetings, a series of bows and gestures that traced centuries of tradition. Leora performed each step perfectly, her expression neutral, her movements precise. Every eye in the hall watched her, and she felt the weight of expectation pressing upon her shoulders. Yet, as she moved through the ceremony, she could feel Ethan's gaze. It was steady, observant, curious, but not judgmental. It was unlike the glances of others, which were often nervous or overly formal. During a brief pause in the proceedings, one of the ceremonial games began. It was a test of mental agility and strategic thinking, a challenge designed to show both intelligence and grace under pressure. Leora had practiced this countless times with her tutors and mentors, but there was a new element today. The humans would observe, and any mistake could be interpreted as weakness or indecision. The first round began. Leora moved her pieces across the board with care, calculating each step while maintaining her posture and facial composure. The human observers murmured among themselves, some impressed, some curious. Ethan watched quietly, his expression unreadable, his mind clearly analyzing not only the game but the princess herself. A small misstep occurred when a younger Viridian student made an error in their turn, forcing Leora to adjust her strategy mid-game. Most individuals would show a flicker of frustration or hesitation, but she remained perfectly calm, adapting smoothly. Ethan's eyes flickered with something resembling admiration. He did not speak, but his attention was clear. He recognized the mental strength and composure she displayed, even under unexpected circumstances. After the game, the ceremony moved to a more interactive part, a display of verbal agility and negotiation skills. Leora was paired with one of the human delegates, a young diplomat who seemed nervous and unprepared. Her role was to guide the conversation, showing both patience and strategic thinking. "Princess Leora," the young human began, "we hope to understand the Viridian approach to interstellar alliances. How does your people ensure cooperation among diverse worlds?" Leora's eyes flicked briefly to Ethan, who watched silently from a short distance. She could feel a subtle challenge in his gaze, a test of her composure. She answered clearly, her tone steady, yet not cold. "Our people value harmony and balance above all. Cooperation is not achieved through force, but through understanding. Every decision considers the needs of both our world and our partners. Diplomacy requires patience, observation, and the willingness to adapt." The young delegate nodded quickly, impressed by her clarity. Ethan, however, added something that made Leora pause slightly, not from surprise but from intrigue. "Princess, your explanation shows wisdom, but what happens when patience is not enough? When decisions must be made quickly, without time for observation or adaptation?" Leora met his gaze, her heart skipping a beat despite herself. The question was direct, unexpected, and entirely human in its practicality. Most Viridian citizens would not dare speak in such a way during a ceremony. She recognized immediately that he was testing her, not challenging her authority, but examining her ability to remain composed under intellectual pressure. She took a slow breath, keeping her expression neutral. "Then one must balance speed with caution. Quick decisions must be informed by principles and knowledge, not emotion. One must remain calm even under pressure and accept responsibility for the outcomes." Ethan nodded, his expression approving. Leora felt a small thrill, an acknowledgement, unspoken, that he understood the challenge she faced. She reminded herself to stay composed. Curiosity was permissible, but fascination could be dangerous if revealed in front of an audience. The next part of the ceremony involved a physical demonstration of agility and control. Princess Leora had trained extensively in this area as well, learning to move with precision, grace, and strength. The exercise required her to navigate a complex series of platforms and obstacles while maintaining balance, posture, and awareness. As she moved through the course, Leora noticed Ethan stepping slightly closer to observe. His calm, focused attention did not distract her, but instead sparked a quiet motivation. She wanted to demonstrate her abilities not only to her people but to him as well. Her movements were smooth, fluid, and confident, a perfect balance of strength and elegance. When she completed the demonstration flawlessly, the audience erupted in polite applause. Leora allowed a subtle nod of acknowledgement, maintaining her composure. She caught Ethan's gaze, and for a brief moment, something passed between them, a silent recognition of skill, discipline, and mutual respect. The ceremony continued into the afternoon, with discussions of strategy, interplanetary politics, and cultural exchange. Leora observed the humans carefully, noting both their strengths and their differences. She could see that humans were direct, sometimes blunt, but capable of ingenuity and courage. Ethan Kane, in particular, stood out as a representative of their best qualities: thoughtful, brave, and attentive without being overly formal. During a brief break, Leora stepped into the palace garden to collect her thoughts. The gardens of Viridian were a place of calm and reflection, with crystal flowers that glowed softly in the sunlight and small streams of water that reflected the twin suns in endless patterns. She took a slow walk along the winding paths, her mind racing with thoughts of the morning's events. Ethan followed at a respectful distance, noticing her need for space. He spoke quietly without interruption. "Princess, your composure is remarkable. It is not easy to maintain such grace under constant observation." Leora paused, turning slightly to face him, her expression carefully neutral. "It is my duty. Composure is not only a skill but a responsibility. Every action, every gesture reflects on my people." "I understand," Ethan replied calmly. "But even leaders need moments to reflect, to observe without expectation. Strength is not only in perfection, but in the awareness of one's own limits. Her heart beat faster at his words, though she kept her expression steady. He was right, and yet he was human, a species she was not supposed to fully understand. His insight was subtle, his respect for her evident, and his presence, quiet, unassuming, was somehow grounding. For the first time, Leora allowed herself to relax slightly. She could feel the tension in her shoulders ease, though she remained alert. She realized that part of composure was not rigid control, but the ability to adapt while maintaining dignity. And in Ethan Kane, she saw someone who could challenge her intellect without threatening her authority. As they returned to the palace hall, the final portion of the ceremony began. A collaborative exercise where humans and Viridian delegates worked together to solve a strategic challenge. Leora was paired with Ethan, their task to navigate a simulated interstellar crisis using both diplomacy and tactical thinking. The exercise tested every skill they had observed in each other throughout the day. Patience, observation, adaptability, and decision-making under pressure. Leora found herself considering his suggestions carefully, realizing that his human perspective brought valuable insights that complemented her own training. "Princess," Ethan said softly, "if we approach the crisis from multiple angles, combining your cultural understanding with human tactics, we can find a solution that neither side could achieve alone." Leora nodded, impressed by the clarity and simplicity of his reasoning. "Agreed. Let us proceed then." Together they guided their teams, combining strategy and diplomacy, intelligence and intuition. The exercise concluded successfully, demonstrating not only their individual strengths but also the power of collaboration across species. Observers whispered among themselves. The morning after the grand ceremony, Princess Leora stood at the balcony of her chamber, watching the sunrise stretch across the crystal city. Viridian's twin suns cast long rays of gold and silver, painting the sky with colors only her world could produce. The city below was alive with motion, its citizens beginning their daily routines, unaware of the quiet tension building within the palace walls. Leora's mind was still replaying the previous day's events. The ceremony had been flawless. She had performed every ritual, spoken with perfect clarity, and moved through every challenge with control. Outwardly, she had done everything expected of a princess. Yet inside, something else lingered. A thought, a memory, a presence. Captain Ethan Kane. The human soldier's words, his direct questions, and his quiet confidence had unsettled her in a way she could not explain. She had faced countless dignitaries, leaders, and rivals, yet never had someone looked at her not as a title, not as a symbol, but as a person. She reminded herself of her duty. Remain composed. Never allow curiosity to grow into distraction. But curiosity was already alive in her heart, and it was not fading. As she stood there, one of her advisors entered the chamber. "Princess Leora, the human delegation will tour the palace today. You are expected to accompany them as a gesture of respect and guidance." Leora turned, her expression calm. "Very well, prepare the halls. I will meet them shortly." The tour began mid-morning. Humans dressed neatly in their uniforms followed Leora through the palace corridors. She walked with poise, explaining the history of Viridian's architecture, the meaning of the crystal designs, and the balance of technology with nature. Her words flowed easily, her tone regal, yet approachable. The humans listened closely, their eyes wide with curiosity. Ethan walked near the front of the group. Unlike the others, he did not stare in awe at every detail. Instead, he studied carefully, asking thoughtful questions about the palace's defenses, the symbolism in its design, and how Viridian's traditions had survived through centuries of interstellar change. His voice was steady, respectful, but each question revealed a sharp and disciplined mind. Leora found herself answering his questions with more care than usual. His inquiries were not empty, they carried purpose. And though she kept her posture perfect, she could not ignore the faint sense of intrigue building inside her. After some time, the group entered the Hall of Ancients, a vast chamber lined with statues of past rulers and heroes. The humans slowed their pace, their footsteps echoing in the silence of the great hall. As the delegation admired the statues, Leora noticed something unusual. The soft hum of the security crystals that lined the walls had shifted. A faint vibration pulsed in the air. Her eyes narrowed. She knew that hum well. It meant a disturbance. A possible breach. Before she could speak, the hum grew louder, and suddenly one of the far doors shuddered as if struck by force. Her attendants gasped, and guards quickly moved to form a protective circle around her. The humans looked startled, but Ethan stepped forward instantly, his hand moving to the sidearm strapped to his uniform. "Princess, stay back," he said firmly, his eyes scanning the hall. Leora's training told her to remain calm, to let her guards handle the matter. But before she could speak, the far door burst open and a small drone-like machine rolled into the hall. Its surface glowed red, and its movements were fast and erratic. "It's a disruptor drone," one of the guards shouted. "Security breach!" The hall erupted into chaos. Humans stumbled backward, guards drew weapons, and attendants hurried to shield the princess. But Ethan Kane was already moving. His reflexes were sharp, his body steady as he stepped in front of Leora. The drone shot forward, releasing a burst of energy that shattered part of a nearby statue. Ethan's eyes tracked its movement in an instant. With calm precision, he drew his weapon, fired once, and struck the drone's side. It sparked violently but continued spinning toward the group. Without hesitation, Ethan dropped low, lunged forward, and grabbed the device with both hands. The energy core hummed dangerously as if seconds away from explosion. Leora gasped softly, her usually calm expression breaking for a brief moment. "Throw it toward the shield wall," one of the guards shouted. Ethan didn't wait. With all his strength, he hurled the drone across the hall, where it struck the shielded barrier near the entrance. A flash of light filled the room, followed by a loud crack. When the smoke cleared, the drone was gone, neutralized. Silence fell over the chamber. Guards lowered their weapons slowly. Attendants whispered nervously, and the human delegates stared in shock. Leora's heart was racing. For the first time in years, she had felt real danger. Close, immediate, and personal. And in that moment, it had not been her guards who had protected her, but the human soldier standing calmly before her. Ethan turned, meeting her gaze. His breathing was steady, his expression calm, though his hands bore faint burns from the drone's energy. "Are you hurt, Princess?" he asked, his voice low but steady. Leora swallowed, forcing herself to regain composure. "No, I am unharmed." Her tone was steady, but her heart betrayed her. She had not expected to feel shaken. She had not expected a human soldier to stand between her and danger so instinctively, so fearlessly. The rest of the delegation was quickly escorted out, leaving only Leora, Ethan, and a few guards in the hall. He stood quietly, checking the burns on his hands without complaint. She stepped closer, her usual regal mask cracking slightly. "You acted without hesitation," she said softly. Ethan shrugged, as if it were nothing. "Instinct. Protect those who cannot fight. That's what soldiers do." Her eyes lingered on him. "But I am not ordinary. I am the heir to Viridian. You risked your life without thought." His gaze met hers, calm and steady. "All the more reason to protect you." For a long moment she could not look away. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Not flattery, not duty alone. Truth. She felt her chest tighten, her carefully built composure shaking slightly. Quickly she turned her gaze toward the shattered remains of the statue. "Your courage is noted," she said, regaining her neutral tone. "But such risks should not fall on you alone. My guards exist for this reason." He gave a small smile, faint but genuine. "Maybe so, but I didn't think about it, I just acted." Later that day, Leora found herself in the palace gardens again, seeking quiet after the unexpected breach. She sat by a fountain, the gentle sound of flowing water soothing her thoughts. Yet she could not shake the memory of Ethan's actions, the way he had stood before her, fearless, calm, and unshaken by danger. Her people valued control, discipline, and planning. Yet here was a man who had acted with instinct, not calculation, and had saved her without hesitation. For the first time, she questioned whether discipline alone was the true measure of strength. Ethan approached quietly, his steps soft against the crystal pathways. He stopped a respectful distance away. "Princess, I hope I'm not disturbing you." Leora looked up, her expression composed again. "No, you may speak." He studied her for a moment. "What happened today? It was not your fault. Whoever sent that drone, they wanted to test your defenses, maybe even to shake your confidence. But you stayed calm. That's not easy, even for a soldier." Leora tilted her head slightly. "And you stayed calm even as danger came directly toward you. Do humans always act with such instinct?" "Not always," Ethan admitted. "Some panic, some freeze. Training helps. But in the end, sometimes you just move. You don't think about yourself. You think about protecting others." Her gaze softened slightly. "Your instincts saved me." "For that I owe you more than words," he shook his head. "You owe me nothing, Princess. I only did what was right." For a long moment, silence hung between them. Leora studied him carefully, her mind racing. She wanted to ask more, about humans, about courage, about how he could face danger with such calm, but she held her questions. Her role demanded control, not personal curiosity. Yet deep inside she felt something shift, a growing respect, and perhaps something even deeper, though she would not name it. That evening, when the palace was quiet again, Leora stood by her balcony once more. The twin moons of Viridian rose slowly into the sky, their light reflecting off the crystal towers. She placed her hands on the railing, her mind heavy with thoughts. For years, she had believed that strength meant perfection, flawless composure, unshakable discipline, control over every word and action. But today, she had seen another kind of strength, raw, instinctive, born not of tradition but of heart, and it had come from a human soldier, someone she had once considered unpredictable and chaotic. She closed her eyes, remembering his steady gaze, his calm voice, his burned hands that had not trembled even after the danger had passed. Her heart beat faster, and for the first time in a long time she admitted something quietly to herself. She was no longer simply curious. She was moved. The moment of vulnerability had passed, but it had left its mark. Princess Leora knew her journey was changing. Her composure would still guide her, but now she carried something else within her, the memory of a human soldier's courage, and the realization that strength could take many forms. And far away, in his guest quarters, Captain Ethan Kane sat quietly, his burned hands wrapped in simple cloth. He thought of the alien princess who carried herself with such grace, yet whose eyes had revealed something very human. The palace of Viridian was quieter than usual the next morning, yet Princess Leora could feel the unease in the air. The attack of the drone in the Hall of Ancients had unsettled everyone. The advisors whispered in corners, the guards doubled. Their watch and the citizens in the city below were beginning to ask questions. Who had sent the drone? What did it mean? Was the royal family safe? For Leora, the event was not only a matter of security, but also of politics. If her rivals within the council believed she had failed to protect the delegation, they would use it against her father, King Valen, and against her future as heir. She needed to act carefully. She needed to show strength, wisdom, and composure, more than ever. Captain Ethan Kane, meanwhile, had become the quiet focus of attention. His brave action during the attack had spread through the palace like wildfire. Some saw him as a hero, proof of human courage. Others whispered that his presence was dangerous, that his direct involvement might embarrass Viridian's own guards. Leora knew she had to handle this carefully. The galaxy watched every move. That afternoon, the Royal Council gathered in the Chamber of Balance, a vast, circular room lined with crystal pillars. Advisors, generals, and ambassadors filled the chamber, their faces sharp with suspicion and tension. Leora sat at her appointed seat, her posture perfect, her expression calm. Beside her stood her father, King Valen, silent and commanding. There. Discussion began with raised voices. This breach shows weakness, one advisor argued. If enemies can send drones into our most sacred halls, then what safety remains for our leaders? Perhaps the humans brought this danger, another accused. Their arrival was the only new factor. We cannot ignore the possibility. Murmurs filled the chamber. Some nodded, others frowned. Leora remained silent for a moment, observing carefully. She knew speaking too quickly would make her seem defensive. But if she stayed quiet too long, others might twist the narrative. Finally, she rose to her feet, her voice calm but clear. Let us not speak in haste. The humans are our guests. They had no hand in this breach, and Captain Kane himself risked his life to save mine. Without him, we may not be speaking here today. Her words silenced the room for a moment. All eyes turned to Ethan, who stood respectfully near the edge of the chamber. He did not boast, did not draw attention to himself. His steady presence spoke louder than any defense. One of the generals frowned. Perhaps. But we must still question. Why now? Who gains from this? The rivals of Viridian watch closely. A single misstep could be used against us in the Galactic Assembly. King Valen finally spoke, his deep voice echoing. Then we will not misstep. We will show strength, not weakness. The princess will take charge of the investigation. This will be her test of leadership. Leora's heart quickened, though. Her face remained composed. A test of leadership. Her father had placed the challenge directly in her hands. She bowed her head slightly. I will not fail. Later, in the quiet of the palace library, Leora met with her closest advisors. Scrolls of history and glowing data crystals lined the shelves. But today, the library felt heavy with tension. Ethan stood nearby, his hands folded behind his back. We have little evidence, said Advisor Salen, her voice firm. The drone was destroyed before it could be traced. Its design is crude but effective. It does not match our known enemies. Which means, Leora said slowly, that whoever sent it is clever. They wish to create confusion, to make us doubt allies and fear shadows. Ethan spoke for the first time. Then you need to do the opposite. Show that you trust your allies. Show that you are not afraid. If they wanted panic, deny them that victory. The advisors looked at him, some skeptical, some thoughtful. Leora studied him closely. His words were simple, but they carried weight. He understood strategy not just in battle, but in diplomacy. Wise words, she said, her voice steady. Then that is what we will do. Tomorrow, the human delegation and I will hold a joint display of unity. We will not hide. We will show the galaxy that Viridian stands strong, with allies at our side. The next day, the great square of Viridian was filled with citizens, council members, and foreign observers. The announcement of a public ceremony had drawn thousands. Crystal banners hung from the towers, their colors shining in the sunlight. Guards stood watch at every corner, their weapons ready, their eyes sharp. Leora stood on the raised platform, her gown flowing like liquid silver, her crown reflecting the twin suns. She looked every bit the princess, calm, regal, unshaken. Beside her stood Captain Ethan Kane, his uniform simple but his presence strong. The contrast between them was striking yet powerful. The ceremony began with words of reassurance. Leora addressed the crowd, her voice carrying across the square. People of Viridian, friends from Earth, and honored guests. Yesterday, our halls were attacked. It was an act of cowardice meant to divide us, to make us doubt one another. But hear me now. We will not be divided. We will not be shaken. Our strength is not in isolation, but in unity. Today I stand before you not alone, but with allies who share our vision of peace. The crowd erupted in applause, their voices echoing across the square. Ethan stood silently beside her, his posture straight, his gaze steady. He did not need to speak. His presence was enough. But as the ceremony continued, Leora noticed movement at the edge of the square. A group of rival counselors whispered among themselves, their eyes cold and calculating. They were not pleased. She knew what they wanted. To see her falter, to see her lose control. The moment came during the question session when one of the rival counselors, a sharp-eyed man named Varric, raised his voice. "Princess Leora," he said, his tone dripping with challenge, "you speak of unity, yet you place a human soldier at your side, as if his courage were greater than the strength of your own people. Are you saying that Viridian's protectors are not enough?" The square went silent. All eyes turned to her. It was the trap she had expected. One wrong word, and her people might see it as weakness. Her heart raced, but her face remained calm. She glanced at Ethan briefly, who gave the faintest nod, silent encouragement. Then she spoke. "I do not stand here to compare strength, counselor. I stand here to show wisdom. Viridian's strength has never been in numbers or weapons alone, but in our ability to learn to adapt and to see value in others. Captain Kane's actions yesterday showed courage. Yes, but also respect, loyalty, and instinct. These are not weaknesses to ignore. They are strengths to honor. And by honoring them, we do not diminish ourselves. We grow stronger." The crowd erupted again, louder than before. Even some of her rivals shifted uncomfortably, unable to argue, against the truth of her words. Ethan remained silent, but Leora could feel his steady presence like a shield at her side. She had faced the challenge, spoken with clarity, and turned the trap into triumph. That evening, when the ceremony was over and the city had quieted, Leora walked alone in the gardens. The moonlight reflected off the crystal leaves, casting soft patterns across the paths. She allowed herself a moment of relief. She had passed the political test for now, but she knew more challenges would come. Ethan approached quietly, as he often did, his footsteps soft but confident. He stopped beside her, his hands clasped behind his back. "You handled that perfectly," he said softly. "You didn't just defend yourself, you inspired them." Leora allowed a faint smile. "It was not easy, but your presence helped. You gave me strength, though you said nothing." He chuckled quietly. Sometimes silence says more than words. For a moment, they stood together in the quiet garden. No crowd, no counselors, no guards, just the princess and the soldier, two individuals who had faced danger and politics side by side. Leora turned to him, her voice softer than usual. "Captain Kane, today I realized something. Composure is not only about silence and control. It is also about knowing when to speak and when to trust others to stand beside you." Their eyes met, and for the briefest moment the distance between princess and soldier seemed to vanish. "Then you're already a great leader," Ethan said. Her heart stirred at the words, though her face remained composed. She turned back, toward the fountain, her mind calm but her spirit quietly alive. The political challenge had been met, but Leora knew the journey was far from over. Her rivals still plotted, the galaxy still watched, and the bond between her and the human soldier was growing stronger with each passing day. And deep inside she wondered, was this bond only respect, or was it becoming something more? For now, she held her answer in silence, but the spark had been lit and the path ahead would only draw them closer together. The days after the public ceremony moved quickly, yet Princess Leora felt each moment deeply. She had faced the political challenge, spoken with strength, and earned the respect of her people. Still, she knew the matter was not finished. Enemies remained hidden, and questions about the drone attack lingered. But now something else weighed on her mind. Not danger, not politics, but the quiet presence of Captain Ethan Kane. Each time she saw him, standing guard during a meeting, walking beside her in the palace halls, or simply watching the city from a balcony, she felt that same inner struggle, the need to remain composed, and the growing pull of admiration for him. One evening, the king summoned Leora to the Hall of Yi. Ancestors. The chamber where the royal family met for private matters. The room was lit by glowing crystals that lined the walls, their light gentle and timeless. King Valan sat upon a low throne, his face serious yet calm. "Daughter," he said, his deep voice steady, "you have done well. The people are reassured. The council is quieter. You have shown yourself ready to lead." Leora bowed her head slightly. "Thank you, Father. I only acted as I was taught." The king studied her closely. "And yet, I see something else in you now. A new strength. This human soldier, Captain Kane, he has affected you." Leora's heart tightened, but her face stayed calm. "He has only reminded me, Father, that strength comes in many forms. His courage, his honesty, they are qualities we must value." The king's eyes softened. "I do not say this as warning, but as truth. Leaders must choose carefully who influences them. Be wise, Leora. The galaxy is watching." "I understand," she said quietly. But as she left the chamber, she wondered if she truly understood her own heart. The next day brought news. The Galactic Assembly had called for a special session to discuss the incident on Viridian. Delegates from dozens of worlds would attend, and Leora was expected to speak. It would be her greatest challenge yet. She prepared carefully. For hours, she practiced her speech, refining every word until it was balanced. Firm, but respectful. Strong, but not arrogant. Ethan, though not part of the official planning, found himself nearby. Sometimes he gave quiet feedback, suggesting how her words might sound to human ears. Other times he simply stood, offering silent support. On the evening before her departure, they walked together in the palace gardens. The stars glowed above them, twin moons casting soft silver light across the crystal trees. "You're ready," Ethan said at last. Leora turned to him, her expression calm but her voice gentle. "Am I? The assembly is not like the council. They will look for every mistake. They will weigh every word." "Then don't give them mistakes," Ethan said simply. "Do what you did before. Be honest. Speak with respect. Show them who you are." She studied him for a moment, her eyes searching his face. "You speak as though you know me well." He gave a small smile. "Maybe I do." For a long moment, silence hung between them, filled only by the soft rustle of crystal leaves. Then, Leora looked away, gathering her composure. "Tomorrow will decide much, perhaps too much. Whatever happens," Ethan said, "you won't face it alone." The Galactic Assembly met on a grand station orbiting the star of Ryden. The chamber was massive, a dome of light and steel, filled with hundreds of delegates seated in circular tiers. Voices echoed in dozens of languages, translators humming softly. Leora entered with her father and her advisors, her gown shimmering with silver threads, her crown glowing faintly under the chamber lights. Ethan walked behind her, part of the delegation, his presence steady. The session began with formal greetings, then moved to heated discussion. Some delegates demanded answers. Others accused Viridian of weakness, suggesting the drone attack showed they could not protect their allies. A few even hinted that humans had somehow been involved. Finally, it was Leora's turn. She rose gracefully, the chamber quieting. Her voice carried clear and strong. "Honored delegates, I stand before you not to deny what happened on Viridian. Yes, there was an attack, yes, there was danger. But we must ask, what was the purpose of this act? It was not to destroy us, it was to divide us. To make us distrust each other. To make us fear." She paused, letting her words settle. All eyes remained fixed on her. But fear is not strength. Suspicion is not wisdom. If we yield to them, then the hidden hand behind this attack has already won. Instead, we must show unity. We must value courage wherever we find it, in humans or Viridians, in old allies or new. Her voice grew stronger, her composure shining like a shield. "I do not stand here alone. I stand with those who proved themselves in action, not just in words. And I tell you now, the galaxy is safer when we stand together. That is the lesson of Viridian, that is the path forward." The chamber erupted in voices. Some cheered, others whispered, but no one could deny the power of her words. From his seat, Ethan watched quietly. He felt pride, not for himself, but for her. She had spoken not only as a princess, but as a leader. When the session ended, the decision of the assembly was clear. Viridian was praised for its strength and wisdom. The drone attack was condemned as an act of sabotage by unknown forces, and Leora was recognized as a rising voice of unity in the galaxy. That night, in the quiet of the station's observation deck, Leora stood by the wide glass window gazing at the endless stars. Ethan approached, his footsteps soft. "You did it," he said simply. She turned to him, her face calm, but her eyes bright. "We did it. Without you, I might not have found the right strength." Ethan shook his head. "You had it all along. I only reminded you." For a moment they stood in silence, watching the stars. Then Leora spoke softly. "Captain Kane, there is something I must tell you. When we first met, I struggled to remain composed. I told myself it was only curiosity. But as time passed, I realized it was something deeper. You showed me courage, yes, but more than that, you reminded me that leadership is not about isolation. It is about trust." Ethan's eyes met hers. He did not speak at once, choosing his words carefully. "And you reminded me that discipline doesn't mean coldness. You've shown me grace, patience, and strength in ways I didn't expect. I respect you more than I can say." Leora's breath caught, though she remained composed. She gave the faintest of smiles. "Respect is enough. Perhaps it is the strongest beginning." Ethan nodded. "Then let's begin." The days that followed were filled with new decisions, new challenges, and new beginnings. The alliance between Earth and Viridian grew stronger. The story of the princess and the human soldier spread across the stars, not as gossip, but as inspiration. In time, Princess Leora became known not just for her composure, but for her ability to see strength in others. And Captain Ethan Kane was remembered not just as a soldier, but as the human who stood quietly at her side, helping her shape a future built on unity. Together, though bound by different worlds, they had shown the galaxy something unforgettable. That respect can build bridges where fear builds walls. That courage and composure together can change the fate of worlds. And that sometimes, the most powerful stories begin not with grand battles, but with a single meeting between two very different beings who choose to stand together.